Hello again. Welcome to Preparation for Google Certified Educator Level 1. This is Session 5. Please take a moment and register at the URL on your screen, or you can simply just catch the QR code there and it'll take you to the right form. And my name is Brett Petrillo. I am indeed a Google Certified Educator and Trainer. You can find me on Twitter at Brett Petrillo and on my website at brettpetrillo.com. This preparation session is about how to achieve your Google Educator Level 1. This is the first level of training. You do, however, have to take the Google Certified Educator Level 1 exam. I do not provide the exam, nor do I register for you for the exam. You have to do that yourself, and I'll tell you where to get that in a second. It costs $10, and when you do pass it, you get this fancy badge here that you see on your screen, Level 1 Certified Educator. This is where you get it. This is the Google for Education Training Center webpage, edutrainingcenter.withgoogle.com. On this website, you will also find tons of information about all of the steps and all of the information and all of the apps that you need to pass this exam. It's a great site with a lot of great resources. I highly recommend you get yourself to this site. That said, last week we took a look at Google Sheets with formatting, formulas, sorting, charts, unique, COUNTIF, explore, and VLOOKUP. This week we're going to take a look at Google Forms and focus in on all the settings and options that you have there, formatting options as well. We're going to look at the quizzing feature and automatic grading that you get within there. We're going to take a look at branching and how you can differentiate your quizzes or forms. We're going to take a look at how you share that information with people and all the data that you get from a form and how that's viewable. And we're also going to explore some cool ideas that some teachers are using forms for. That said, Google Forms can be found at forms.google.com. And let's begin talking about settings. Now, as always, there's a bunch of ways to get to where you want to be. And if you want to get to Forms, you can type in forms.google.com and you'll end up at this page here with lots of choices, blank, starting blank, and you also have some templates and a list of your recents there. You can also go to your little app button there, and if you have Google Forms installed, you can click there, and it'll also take you to that exact same window. Or, as I like to do, I like to go from my drive and drop down the New button, and when I get to More, I can click on Google Forms. Now I have two options here. I can create a blank form, or I can create one from a template. Just for now, I'm going to go with the blank form. Now, as you can see here on the screen, my form is indeed untitled, and up in the left-hand side or the left-hand corner, it does reflect that it's untitled. I've got here some questions. That is the screen that I'm on now, and I have one untitled question. I'm going to get into this a little bit more in a second. I also have a tab up here called Responses, and you can see I have 0 responses because, well, I haven't sent it out to anybody. I haven't finished it. And if you look up here in the top right-hand corner, you see there's a little color palette, and if you hover over it, it will indeed say color palette. This is where you can change the way your form looks. So if I click on there, I have the choice from all these little colors, all these little circle colors here. There's quite a few to choose from. And if, for example, I choose red, then you can see that my form chooses red for the banner and a type of red, or a pink in this case, for the background color. And I can choose any color that I wish. However, I can also go down here to this bottom right-hand corner and choose an image. If If I click on that, it's going to ask me to choose an image from all of these topics here, work and school. You can see all the list of topics, or other, which doesn't really fit into a category. And if I choose one, let's just say, for example, I want to choose this one here with the book. I would just click on it and select. Now you notice that it's put that picture as my header, but the background of the form is chosen by the computer or by the program to best suit the image that is chosen, no matter which image you choose. Another example would be to choose something with more color, select, and there we have it. So it automatically chooses this background color based on the color of your banner. All right, now you may have noticed also when I choose to put an image in, I can upload a photo from my computer or from my album that is already there. So I have a lot of choice, a lot of options with how to decorate my form. All right, let's move on from here. If I want to preview my form, I would click on this button there. It looks like an eyeball, and it says preview when you hover over it. Moving to the right, I have the well-known settings symbol, and when I click on settings, I have three options in the top. I have general settings, I have presentation settings, and I have quizzes. Let me go through the general first of all. Here we can select whether or not we want to automatically collect the email addresses of the people that are responding to the form. Now if I check it, it says collect email addresses, and I can click on a response receipt. So after they have completed the form, they will, if they choose, receive a response via email. That's where I have it selected now, if the respondent requests it, or I could just have it so it always sends the responder a receipt. Now, I'm not too big on that. I don't really need that there, so I'm going to unclick. Now, you see down here where it says requires a sign-in. Well, right now I have checked. The default is that it would restrict to people in my domain. Now, I'm not a big fan of this if I want to send it out to everybody that views my website or anybody watching this video. I would need it to be accessed or I would need responders to be able to come from anywhere, even outside my domain. So I would uncheck that. And if I only want responders to respond one time, I could click that there. Now you can see how that's beneficial if you're using it in your class and you only want people or students to respond to the quiz, for example, one time, then you would select that. You might also, if you're using it for your students, have it restricted to the domain if all of your students are using your school domain address. You can also have the choice of what the respondents can do if you want them to be able to edit their work after they submit, or see a summary, charts, and text responses, so they get a little bit of feedback from everybody who is taking or filling in the form. And if we go back up here to the top in presentation, we have some more options. I can show a progress bar underneath so that the students or whomever is taking it or filling in the form can show where or how far they've gone and how much time they have left or how many questions they have left. I can also shuffle the question order automatically so that if you have people taking the form right next to each other, well, they may not necessarily get the same question at the same time. And when they complete the form, I can choose to have them receive a response from me that is personalized. In this case, the default is your response has been recorded. And now up here where it says quizzes, this is a fairly recent addition to Google Forms. And when I click on quizzes, I have the option of making it a quiz and assigning point values to the questions and allow auto grading. So I'm going to show you this for a second. I'll get into it a little bit more deeply in a bit, but if I want to make it a quiz, I have to turn it on, and I'm given these options. I can immediately have the grade be released after the submission of the form, or I can have it done later after manual review. And I'm going to talk about this later, why you might want to do it later instead of immediately. Both of them have their benefits, but I'll get into this later when I'm talking about quizzes. And you can have here checked whether or not they can see if they've missed questions, or if they have if they can see the answers they've gotten correct. Now, the important thing here in the settings is that we go down to save. We always have to save our options in the settings here. This is not something that Google just saves automatically. So make sure you go down to the bottom and hit save. Now we're back here to the main screen of the form, and I still have an untitled form. So let me title this one a demo form, just for the sake of this video. Now you'll notice that the title up in the top hasn't changed, but if I click on it, it'll automatically change to the title of the form that I gave it right there, a demo form. I can also add a description right underneath. It's not mandatory, but I can do that. And now, because I chose in my settings that the email addresses would be collected, here is an automatic addition where the respondent would have to type in their email address. Now note, if you're using this with your students and you have it restricted to your domain, this won't appear because it'll automatically record their email address because they've had to sign in. I also had it so that they didn't have to sign in. Therefore, they'd have to write their email address if I was to collect it. And I can change the setting right there. It just reminds me that I am collecting email addresses. And then you go down here, and I have my very first question that is untitled. And let me give it a title, question number 1. Now you see that this blue line appears next to the question that I'm editing. And I have several options that have opened up for me here. I'm going to hover over here where it says multiple choice. And if I click the down arrow, I'm given all sorts of options of what type of question I want to put in there. I can choose to put a short answer, which allows you to write text in a short little box. So if you have your students just writing one sentence answers, that's what you would choose there. Or I can choose to have paragraph answers, and it provides a lot more space to answer the question. I can choose to have multiple choice, therefore giving them several options from which they can choose their correct answer. Or check boxes. That example would be, select 3 of the following 5 items, for example. I can have a drop down where I give them several choices and they would choose the one that applies to them. If I go down here, you'll see linear scale, and that's when you are rating things, for example, from 1 to 5. Perhaps 1 is rated poor and 5 is rated excellent. Then you have a multiple choice grid, and I can also insert the date and time in there. All right, so let's just practice here with multiple choice. And when I want to put in an option, I would just click right where it says option 1, and I would type in the first option. When I'm finished, I would go down and hover over add option and click there. It automatically gives me an add option, and I can put several in there to give the choices that you wish. Now you notice too over here on the right When I do all that, I have these X's that show up. And if I want to get rid of one of the options, I would just hit the X button and it would disappear. It deletes it. All right. This here also, this little symbol that shows up is suggesting or allowing me to insert an image. If I click on that, I get all the Google functionality where I can insert an image by uploading it, snapshot by URL, my albums, the drive, or I can search. This is across the Google apps on how to insert images. You can insert them right in to your multiple choice questions. Then if I look all the way down here, I have the option of duplicating a question. So if I want to duplicate the format and the structure, I can just click that and it will duplicate it underneath. I can delete the entire thing. I want to start over maybe, and that's where I would, the trash can there. And I also have the option of making the question required. If I click that, all of a sudden it turns green, and when the respondent sees the question, they'll see a red star similar to this one right there that lets them know that that question is required. All right, they can't skip it, they have to answer it. And you'll see the snowman over here, and you know when you click on the snowman you get some more options, and you can show a description of the question. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on. Go to section based on answer, and you can allow this to shuffle the order of all of your options in this multiple choice. So this snowman that I just clicked on will give you different options based on the different type of question that you're inserting. And now that I have my question fairly sorted out in my demo form, I want to take your attention over here to this bar, which gives me other options as far as adding in different sections. Now, if I click this plus sign, you'll see that it just adds another question, and I can do the process all over again where I choose what type of question I want to insert. Or I can click add a title and a description. Now if I click that, it gives me another section, and I can write down a title and a description. This comes in handy if I want to create a new section. I can also add an image. And again, it takes me to the Google Image Insert Image screen, which is the same across all of the Google apps. And just to show you what it looks like, I'm going to search for an appropriate image of, let's say, Shakespeare. And I'm going to insert that image into my form. And you'll notice that I have the option of titling the image as well. So you can add to your form you can add images to your form and really get creative with what types of questions you're asking. Or let's say I want to add a video. It will take me to a by URL or searching YouTube. And I can insert that video right into the form. And now you see the potential again of how you can get very creative with the questions that you're able to ask. All right, and last but not least in this is adding a section. When I add a section, you'll see that when I scroll down, I am given section 2 of 2. However, you'll notice that after section 1, it gives me this option right there, continue to next section. I have some choices here, and this I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, and it allows you some pretty cool choices as far as how you want people to answer your form. And if you head up here in the top right-hand corner of your form, you have the 3 snowmen again. You know that gives you some more options. And if I click on that, I have an undo button. I have a make a copy button or move to trash. I can get a pre-filled link or print my form. I can add collaborators, so I can have somebody else helping me construct my form. I can edit the script, and I can look for add-ons for the form right there. All right, so that was a quick introduction to just the settings that you're going to get with Google Forms. Okay, now that we've developed our basic understanding of forms and its settings and how we can format it, I want to go back to the idea of quizzing. I want to turn my form into a quiz that can be self-grading, so I don't have to do it. I'll show you how to do that. Now remember, we go back up here to the settings, and I'm going to go back to quizzes up there, and I'm going to turn it on. This has to be on if I want to make it a quiz. So I'm going to click there and turn it on, and remember from the last section, I have all of these choices here. For now, I'm going to choose to immediately release the grade afterwards, and I'll show you the difference later on. And again, reminder, you have to save the changes that you make. Now, when I save those changes and I click on question number 1, which was my multiple choice demo, you'll see immediately down here there is an answer key button that has been added to the question. And when I click on that, I am taken to a screen that asks me to give a point value to the question. Now you can go as high as you want, 10 points, perhaps only 1 point if there's only one answer. It's completely up to you. And you can also choose which one of your options is the correct option. So let's pretend for this video's sake that option 3 was the correct one. I would just choose it, and that automatically has registered as the correct answer. And I can also put in some feedback when the student gets an incorrect answer or a correct answer. I can write something here that those students will see. Now, in my opinion, one of the best features of this is that in the feedback, I can provide a link. That link can take the student to a supplementary activity or added information or a website that will help them better understand the topic that they're studying. And as always, remember to go over here and save your changes. Now, I am still in the answer key format. To go back to edit the question, I would just click on this option down here that says Edit Question. And there you have it. You see that option 3 has a check mark by it because it is the one that I labeled as being correct. And this question is worth 1 point. Now, if I'm designing purely multiple choice questions or checkbox questions, then you can see that Google can automatically grade the quiz or the test for you and provide automatic feedback in the form of a score to your students. But what happens if I don't want to always use multiple choice or just simple checkbox answers? Can I include short answers in my form? Yes, you can. And you can also have it as part of a quiz. I'm going to go back up here to where it says Settings, and I'm going to choose under Quizzes to provide the feedback later, after manual review. In doing this, the student will not automatically get the grade at the end of the quiz, allowing you time to go back into the quiz and manually grade and manually give feedback to the students. So delaying the release of the score or the grade allows you to go back into the completed form and manually grade those questions that need you to read them. Google's not able to grade a paragraph answer, for example. So if you can, you have the opportunity, or if you'd like to, you have the opportunity to go back into the form and manually grade them yourself. And before we move on, I want to point out a fairly recent update in Google Forms underneath these choices. You'll probably remember earlier I skipped over this file upload. And actually, you can see right now I'm not able to choose it. That's because I have it set so that it can accept responses from anybody. But if, and you can see that here, this form is collecting email addresses just from anybody. If I restrict it to my domain, so if you're at a school, if you restrict all of the respondents to be with your domain and check that box and hit save, all of a sudden you have this new option that is file upload. Now I think this was an update back in October. What this allows is for you to create a section in your form that allows the respondent to upload a document. And it says that all files will be uploaded to the form's owner's Google Drive. Make sure only to share this form with people you trust. And if you hit continue, it allows you to make some choices. You can give it a question. You can allow only specific file types. So if I open that up, I can choose, well, I want a document, maybe a spreadsheet, PDF. Maybe I don't want a video, but maybe they can put a drawing in there. You choose, up to you. It's up to you. And then you can choose the max amount of files that somebody can upload and the max size. And there you have it. So the respondent can, based on your prompt, create files and then upload them into your form. So you can start to see now how having this quizzes section graded later after manual review, how that can become very beneficial because you can take a look at their form that they've submitted and review it and give it a grade as you see fit. When it comes time to sending out your form for data collection or to get your students to respond to it, Google Forms has changed the language a little bit. You notice up here that there is a send button. Now, typically in Google Apps, we have a share button. But they didn't want to confuse things with sharing as a collaborator and sending out your form. So this button up here says send. When I click send, I have a bunch of options, typically like you do always across Google Apps. You can send via mail or as a link or as an embedded form into, for example, perhaps a website. You can email it directly to someone so that it shows up right there as you open up your mail, your message in the email. You can also share your form if you're looking for a wider audience for as much data as possible. You can share it or send it on Google+, on Facebook, or Twitter. Therefore, you could get numerous amounts of respondents that way. But before I'm going to send it, I want to make sure that my form is good to go. Now, I kind of skimmed over this earlier, this preview button, but I can't stress it enough. You really want to click this preview button as much as possible throughout the creation of your form so that you can see what your respondents will see. Now, take a look. After I've clicked it, the format, the structure has kind of changed the way it looks. The presentation format is quite a bit different than the editing format. Now, it's important also to know that when I clicked that preview button, it opened it up in a new tab in my Chrome browser. So just to get back to the editing mode, I'm just going to close this tab, and you'll see that the editing functionality is still open. All right. So I can't stress this enough. Always preview your form throughout the creation of it so that you know exactly what your respondents are going to see. Very important. And then when you're ready, you go up to the send button and send it whichever way you choose. And down here, you'll notice that if you want to add a collaborator, this is also Google's way of trying to make it so you don't get too confused with sending and sharing. They've called anybody who works on the document with you, they've called them collaborators, and you can add them there just in case you hit that send button by mistake and you're like, oh no, I want to add a collaborator. I don't quite want to send out my form quite yet. And there was another way to add collaborators. If you remember up here in the snowmen, you can go down there and add a collaborator to have somebody working on the creation of the form with you. When it comes to looking at data, or the data that you've collected from a Google form, Forms has really made an improvement with how the data is presented. Now, the forms of old has been revamped, and let me show you in this example that I have on the screen now. This is a grading survey that one of the teachers here put together about the beliefs of grading. And you'll notice over here next to questions, I've pointed at this earlier, that there's 32 responses. Now, if you want to see any of the responses, you just click there. And it gives you a couple choices. The default, or the first selected, is the summary of all of the results. And Google Forms will automatically put the results of your form, or all the data that you've collected, into a very nice visual format. You can see here that this was a multiple choice question, and it clearly states or illustrates what is happening with this question. Okay, then, for example, if there was some written feedback, it just presents it nice and orderly there. Another multiple choice question, breaking up very clearly how people responded. All right, and it goes down like such. So this is a very convenient and nice way that Google Forms automatically displays the data for you. Now, if I go over here to individual, I get a look at how each individual respondent marked their answers. And this is how, if you had a student or a quiz, this is how you would go through one student at a time. And you'd be able to see what that student answered. And quite easily able to go to the next student by just clicking this next arrow. So you have 1 of 32. I can click the next arrow and go to 2 of 32. Or let's say I want to jump. I can just type in the number I want, 11, and hit there, and it would take me right to that student. All right, so there's 2 ways of seeing the data. One, as a summary of all the data you've gathered, and 2, you can look at individually which student or which respondent answered what, right there within Google Forms. Now, there's a 3rd way to see the data, and if you go over here to the top right-hand corner above this Accepting Responses button, and you see that I can view all of the responses in a Google Sheet. And if I click that button, it pops up in a Google Sheet, all of the data that I've collected. So you can see that this can get a little hectic depending on the type of form that you've created. But once you have it into a Google Sheet, you have all the functionality that Google Sheets offers as far as analyzing the data that you've gathered. So there you have it. There's 3 different ways to view the data that you've collected with your Google form. if you're looking to create an assessment that is dynamic and that reacts or responds in a way depending on how students answer questions, then branching is the way you go. Now, a word of warning, this can get very complicated, or actually, in other words, your form can get very complicated quite quickly. But I'm going to show you how to do it because I think it's pretty darn cool. I alluded to earlier this whole part right there where it says continue to next section. And remember that we created a section by adding a section right there where it looks like the big equals sign. I kind of see it as. But you would add a section. And then you can see my section 2 of 2 is untitled. Now, when I did that, you see that this popped up right there. Continue to next section. This is after I finished section 1. And then I have these options, right? Or I could go to section 2, or I can submit the form after that section. So you could choose. The way you branch is by adjusting one of your questions and going to the snowman right there and go to section based on answer. When you select that, then based on whichever selection that my respondent chooses, I can tell them where to go within the form. So in this example, let's say that option 1 is correct. So then I want them to go on to section number 2. But let's say that option 2 is incorrect. Therefore, I might have them go to section 1 again for practice, so that if they've answered incorrectly, I can then direct them to a section of my form that could possibly provide them some added support. A good way to look at this is, let's say you inserted a video into your form, and that video talks about the concept that you're trying to explain or the concept that you are assessing. Now, I have a question, and the student clearly doesn't show understanding of the topic that I'm assessing. Therefore, I can automatically send that student to a section of my form that will provide them added support. And then I can follow that added support up with another question that can then make a determination on whether or not they're ready to continue on in the form. Now, like I said earlier, this can get complicated. Your form, when you're creating it, can get tricky. So I recommend highly that you illustrate this out to make it a little bit easier for you to know what you're planning on doing in your assessment or in your form. But again, branching is when you have students go to certain sections of your form based on their answer. And it's a wonderful way to have a dynamic assessment that reacts to your students' needs. Some other cool ideas come right from the Google Forms webpage. If you start from there, you get these options, these template options, and obviously this one is just blank. But next to it, you can see that there's a course evaluation. I'll show you that in a second, like worksheet, or just a basic assessment, or an exit ticket. Those are all cool ideas. This is what the course evaluation looks like to the student. So you can see that it's decorated nicely. You put your name in there. And then these are all templates, so they're all modifiable. You can change them to suit your needs. But you can see how if you're curious and getting some feedback from your students, this is a cool way to do that. A worksheet, instead of having a printed one, you put your title in there, collect your information, and then perhaps you insert an image. You have a question about the image. You could also include 2 or 3 paragraphs of text and then a question. So when you are giving out a worksheet in paper form, those worksheets can be turned into Google Forms. So that's another cool idea. Or the exit ticket looks like this to students. All the typical information, and then just 3 simple questions at the end of it. And they submit it, and you have the data right there. Or perhaps a quiz, and that's the typical one. But there you go, and you can also put text into your quiz. Now, these are just the templates that you're getting from Google Forms. Now, I've seen teachers use Google Forms as note-taking throughout the class. I've seen science teachers conducting their labs through Google Forms with the ability to add images and video and text and having students upload their own documents to a form. The limits of Google Forms are expansive. There are almost no limits at all. So try to think outside the box a little bit with Google Forms. Google Forms is a lot more than just a survey tool, if you will. It is honestly, the only limit is your imagination. All right, well, that brings us to the end of session 5, focused on Google Forms. Please join me next week for Google Slides and Google Drawings. With Slides, we're going to get into all the settings and importing and explore and the audience tools. And Google Drawings, we'll get into the settings as well and creating flowcharts and also importing. Thank you very much for coming. Again, my name is Brett Petrillo. You can find me at the website brettpetrillo.com and on Twitter at Brett Petrillo. See you next week.